going ahead.
It's on my
Hi.
it's on my third screen, so I'm trying to
Okay.
figure out where it is too.
All right. Well, if I'm good to go,
Sounds good, Sandy.
okay. Thanks, Heidi, so much. Again, I'm Sandy Hardy Smith. I work for a small nonprofit organization in Texas called Imagine Enterprises. I've been with them for about going on 21 years now. We're a small nonprofit. We help people with disabilities get be a part of their community, be that jobs, social security benefits, understanding benefits, the waiver programs, employment, transition age youth. We kind of do it all. We've been incorporated since 1994, and I joined them in 1999, and they organized as a virtual office or as a virtual organization. So we've always had home offices. So for the last 21 years, I've been home officed. My nearest colleague is actually 100 miles away from me. So we are spread out all throughout Texas. And it's been an adventure. I did have a conventional office for 16 years. And I know I'm older than dirt, so don't do the math as I'm doing this. But I had an office for 16 years, and I remember when I got the job offer to work from home, I thought, wow, I've hit the jackpot. You know, life is going to be so cool now. And again, remember, this was 1999 when AOL was the rage and a cell phone weighed about a ton. So offices were rare to work from home. So it was kind of an interesting experience. I can vividly remember setting up my office. I converted one of our small bedrooms, and I remember the technology started coming in, the equipment started coming in, the office furniture started coming in, the office supplies started coming in, and I thought, oh my goodness, I was a little overwhelmed. But then all of a sudden I had this home office, and I thought, then reality hit. The trainings started, and trainings and team meetings just kind of took on their whole new life because you're not sitting next to somebody, you're not seeing that socialization. You have to really focus and listen so that you can learn and retain and then implement what they're teaching you. But my very first day at work, I'm sitting at my house at my desk in my home office. I got my scope of work out, and it was pure silence. So I'm going to kind of walk you through some of the things that I've learned over these 21 years. Since that time, I now am the Chief Operating Officer at Imagine Enterprises, and I have 12 remote staff right now who I have trained and who I supervise. So I can kind of give it to you from a service perspective, and then kind of helping other people with different learning personalities than me figure a few things out. So hopefully I can give you a diverse field of things to consider. So I'm happy to share what I did wrong, happy to share more what I've done right, you know, how we cope and how you guys can excel in this position. So let's go ahead and get started. This slide needs no words. I mean, COVID-19 has literally shifted our world and our sense of what's normal and what's familiar, like overnight. Everything has just changed. We've all had to change with it. There's no more business as usual anywhere in the world, actually. You know, businesses are closing, jobs are lost. I'm going to warn you, I homeschool. I'm raising 2 grandkids. They may walk in here, hopefully they won't. But, you know, school's closed, but it's not out. School's still happening. And then other businesses such as State VR has shifted. You know, now they're looking at doing remote services. And I know in Texas, we get flyers and updates from them all the time on what other exceptions that they're currently implementing right now, so that the people who receive services through our State VR aren't being left behind because we can't see them face to face. But this has all happened overnight. So I don't know if you guys have all shifted to working from home. I'm not sure how much time they've given you to do that. It's going to be exciting and confusing and scary. But mostly, I hope today to share with you how to kind of just get set up, take a deep breath and get through this. Because outside of now learning how to do your job from home, you're still dealing with all of the ramifications of what COVID has brought into all of our lives. Since the COVID epidemic, I have lost 5 people. So, you know, it's not just you're working from home now. This is a pandemic, and so we need to kind of stay focused on that. So today, I hope to share with you how to adjust, like I said, to working at home, how to successfully deliver the services that you're required to deliver from a remote standpoint, how to think through each step of your job. You know, you'll see this learning objective here, and a lot of it is, well, developing a plan, referrals, outreach, gathering. You know, I already do that. But how you do it from home really is going to be a little bit of a different twist. Do you have the supplies and supports necessary for you to do your job, to provide the training and the supports that you need? Do you need additional training yourself? These are things we're going to look at. I'm sorry. Suddenly I have a tickle in my throat. We're going to look at some pitfalls. Working from home is not all that in a bag of chips. There are some things that just other people don't understand when you work from home. So let's look at some of the things you need to look at. So by the end of today, I hope that, oh my goodness, that you will understand now that you're leaving your real office and going to a home office, what your agency's expectations are for you. What do they expect you to get done? What does the revised process look like? You know, you guys might have intranet, you know, do you have access to your files? Those are things that we need to know. How is communication going to work? You know, do you have all the communication features that you need to get your job done? You know, there's social media, there's the Zoom, there's telephones, there's just different types of communication we're going to look at. And then, and probably one of the most important things is, does your home office space, is it functional for you? Are you able to get your work done there? Are you able to secure private documents there? Because you guys have a lot of personally identifying information. And then how you work with somebody face-to-face and how you work with somebody over the phone is very different. It's usually slower. It can be more confusing for both of you. You're not really sure what they're understanding. So these are things we're going to look at. And then, will the documentation, tracking, and reporting change? What does that look like? One of the things that we'll discuss later on is when you're tracking and documenting, it has to be in the same format as all of the other colleagues who do similar work to you, so that you're capturing the information. So we're going to be looking at that. So needless to say, we have all been through a lot of change, and we're not sure how long this is going to last, but we know it's coming. So we're just going to hunker down and get through it. So I wanted to start by prefacing that I work at Imagine Enterprises, and it's a small nonprofit organization. And I understand that that is way different than when you work for a state agency, because there's a lot more rules, regulations. Those are things that you don't have a whole lot of control over. So I'm going to do my best to keep things general, that it should work for everybody, regardless of the rules. And I also understand that states vary different to different. I've lived in Iowa, I've lived in Alaska, lived in Texas. So there's just a lot of change based on what the state has to say. So we're going to forge ahead, and we're going to see what this looks like. But I just want you guys to know that you guys can do this. It's different, but it's not hard. It's just different. So remote service delivery, I always say it's not for the faint of heart. It really is a new mindset and a way of delivering services. When I hire people for open positions at Imagine, one of the things that I look for is, are you an independent thinker? Can you problem solve independently? Are you an introvert or an extrovert? That's a big one. Extroverts right now are just having a really rough time with sheltering in place. And so imagine having to sit and do work all the time. And so I have long details when I'm interviewing people for home office work on how they would feel about not having that immediate feedback or not being able to walk into someone else's office because it's just, my closest office is 100 miles away from me. So it's exciting to work from home, but it's also very different. Caution, changing business conditions ahead. You can see I like the signs. I think they kind of break up the novelty of it. I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room right away, because everybody tries to hide that there's no elephant, but there is an elephant. When you work from home, people have a concept that you don't work, that you have all this free time, mom calls, family calls, friends call, let's go to lunch. They're so excited for you to work from home. You have to set boundaries because the work still needs to get done. I still deal with this. We moved to Stephenville in Texas not too long ago. When the church heard I worked from home, they wanted to put me on all these committees, and I'm like, no, I work from home. And when you're home, there's just so much more temptation than being in the office. Because when you're in the office, you're in the office. But when you're at home, there's laundry that could be done, dishes that could be done, beds that could be made, grandkids or kids here that need your attention, running to the grocery store quick. There's just lots of pulls. There's lots of distractions. And so I wanted to warn you right now, as you enter into this field of home officing, you need to set up a good routine. And we're going to talk about what some of those things are. And we're really going to spend a lot of time on self-care. If I had to look back based on going to a conventional office and now working from home, and especially now supervising, so I'm taking this also from a supervisor standpoint, one of the things that I'm worried about is, are my staff doing okay? Not do I trust them, but are they doing okay? Are they taking care of themselves? Because we do an awful lot of work that's isolated. So we're going to spend some good time talking about self-care and some of the tools that we use at Imagine to check in on each other, because I think it's important. These are just some cute pictures that I found that I thought kind of fit what it's like to work from home. The lower right-hand one makes me laugh with the laundry and the stove all hooked up to the stove. But the work-at-home mom, the one in the middle, and I'm sorry for you gentlemen who are on the call, I couldn't find one with a guy, but what I really do, the one at the lower right hand in the middle, was me about 10 years ago when I started raising my grandkids when they were infants. That literally was me. So your work might look like this, and there's nothing wrong with it. I've been on many conference call while I'm fixing dinner. I've held a sick child while I'm trying to type a report. Maybe you guys don't have kids, maybe you have pets, and the pets are so excited that you're not going to work now. So, but that's all okay. You just have to stay focused on your job. So now that we have the elephant out of the room, one of the things that you need to do as a counselor providing services is you need to talk to your supervisor, or make sure that your supervisor is being really clear with you about what the expectations are. I'm not going to read all of these to you. You guys can read, you guys can see them. But some of the things that I want to point out are, have any parameters of my job changed? Is there anything that I'm no longer able to do or access, so I'm not doing that anymore? You need to be very clear, because maybe you don't have access to this file anymore or to this database anymore. and they're not able to get you that technology. Technology is another big one. You can't do anything from a home office without the proper technology. And I want to talk to you about meetings. I think you should have more meetings than less meetings. And you can't throw stones at me and you can't yell at me because you're on mute. But again, it's that checking in with them to make sure that everything is, number one, you're okay, but number two, the process is working. Because this is a new process, everybody's going to need feedback on how it's doing. The other thing too is when you work from home, the last thing I'm going to talk about on this slide is actually your work schedule. Why would I focus on a work schedule? I'm going to work 8 to 5. Yeah, maybe, maybe not. I find my work schedule varies every day depending on what I have to get done. You know, sometimes I'm in the office in the middle of the night. Is that okay with your boss? You know, I'm always in the office at 6 o'clock in the morning. Is that okay with your boss, or does she want you to have a stricter work schedule? Because I'm raising grandkids, I can flex my schedule as long as I get my job done. Would your boss say that to you? You need to understand, because just working from home is different when you're looking at your schedule. I cannot say it enough. You just have to understand those expectations, because you don't want to get into trouble. Like I said, you want to know the parameters. But you also have to know that it's just different, and I'm going to be saying that to your boss next month when I speak to them. Hopefully they'll sign on and hear that. So you guys can like raise up the help sign and say, this is just too much. I thought I was just going to work in my office. When you first start, it feels pretty good. You know, life is good. I'm at home. I'm maybe working in my pajamas, maybe didn't shower today, got a cup of coffee. You know, I'm doing good. I'm kind of enjoying this quiet. But after some time, it really does change on you. The isolation does get to you. One of the things when you have a home office, you usually have a smaller area to work in. So you want to always be very organized. Have a place for everything, and everything in its place, as my mom used to say to me. Okay? Have the best technology and online capabilities that you can get so that you can get your job done. Make sure you have access to your files and any documents that you may need to. And if you can't access them, what's the game plan? Again, I'm going to refer a lot to what is the process now, because things have changed. You know, and just like school teachers have changed overnight on a dime, you know, getting all that homeschooling out to us, so have all of the people in these businesses who are now trying to home office. They're trying to figure it out. So they need that communication. They need that feedback from you so that they can say, hey, this isn't working. Or, hey, I tried it this way and this does work. So making sure you're doing that. Making sure that you prioritize and triage your day. So I'm not just going to show up at my desk and kind of wonder what's going on. I am a huge fan of calendars, Post-its, to-do lists, anything to keep me organized. And I can have a to-do list, but you still have to prioritize that on what are you doing today. And I put there, you'd be surprised that familiar tasks take a different amount of time, because it's not like I have a 10 o'clock appointment with Sandy and she's going to come into my office and I'm going to go over this, I'm going to hand her this, and I'm going to have her sign that, because Sandy's not there. This is all over the telephone. So as you would normally prioritize your to-do list, there's a shift in there, because now you have multiple steps. How am I going to get that form to Sandy? How will I get this information to or from Sandy? How will I get this form signed and returned from Sandy? It all really is a different model of thinking, and it requires self-discipline that really is, you have to think about it. You won't come into your office and just get busy. There are some days where the week is over before I know I started it. And then there are some Mondays where I'm just like, oh, I can't get started. And I still do that after all these years, even as the boss. The last one might surprise you, but this is the key. And this is where I kind of want to spend some time, because everybody's figuring this out because it's new. Maybe one of your colleagues has figured a few things out. Or maybe your colleague has some information that you know, or that she has that you don't know, about how to access something or get something done or figured out a shortcut. But mostly, having a mentor or a buddy to call when it feels like the walls are closing in. At Imagine, I do weekly calls with all of my team all the time. We have a consistent schedule of what we talk about. We always talk about how the team is doing, what barriers they're reaching. Did they find an easier way to do something? And then we have what's called a peer review, where they go over each other's benefits summaries that we write for people who are on benefits and who go to work. And we have reviewers. It's called peer reviews. They go over each BSNA and they give each other feedback. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful tool. Since COVID-19 has hit, I have shifted all of those meetings to now peer support meetings. And we talk about, how are you doing? How's your family doing? What are your goals for this week? Just for this week, because everybody's dealing with something with COVID-19. And as you go through your goals this week, what are some barriers you're seeing and how can I help? It's a check-in. So they check in every week. Having a buddy or a mentor, even when there's not a pandemic, is necessary, because the isolation can absolutely make you crazy. Or you have a phone call from your boss and it didn't go well and you just didn't understand and you just have to vent to somebody. You need a safe place to go. And so we created the buddy system a long time ago because we recognized self-care. On my team, I've had somebody lose their husband. I've had somebody's son become paralyzed almost. We've all lost parents. You deal with stuff. And, when I went to the office, back when I went to like an office out of the house, you would have all these people surrounding you that you could talk to, or that just changed your way of thinking. And when you're home and life happens to you, you're just kind of home. So really take into consideration the buddy and the mentor thing. I find it highly important. And I love this picture because you're just reaching out virtually to each other, to your beneficiaries, to your vendors, to everybody who's involved in you offering service delivery. This is kind of what our life looks like now. We're reaching out through technology. Now, I don't care if you're seasoned and I don't care if you're brand new to this job, this is tougher than it looks. One of the main rules that I enforce to my team is that you have to be kind to yourself. It's okay that you can't focus today. It's okay that you weren't productive yesterday and you're off to a bad start today. It's okay that your child is sick or needs homeschooling done. All of that is okay. You have to be kind to yourself and not beat yourself up that you're not in the office the minute you're supposed to be, that you didn't accomplish all your goals because life is happening to you. So you have to be kind to yourself. But the key is you can't stay there. You have to figure out what you have to do to get your focus back. Go for a walk, take a shower, play with the kids, play with your pets, whatever it is. Call that friend to help you redirect. I'm telling you, nobody's seasoned enough that they don't go through this. My boss, who's the executive director, and I still have these talks about being unfocused, and we still coach each other through it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Now, as you're starting your day, because you're not taking a shower, getting dressed, and going to the office. Well, you are, but you aren't. So you have to make sure you have your daily routine. You know, make sure you have your schedule. Make sure you're prepared for any possible intrusions. Make sure that you shower, you exercise, you drink your coffee, you get dressed, whatever your self-care is. You know, with my routine, I wake up, I get a cup of coffee, I put the laundry in the dryer or I fold it depending on where it's at. After breakfast is done with everybody, I start the dishwasher. And so I know that the dishes are done. Everybody is programmed to make their beds. So I can't think of one excuse to come out of my office. Oh, I got to do the laundry. Oh, I got to make my bed. Okay. I'm trying to avoid any distractions, because if I'm writing an RFP or if I'm doing something that I don't want to be doing right now because it's kind of boring, grocery shopping suddenly looks good. So you have to develop a routine. And so now my routine is so innate that all of my family members have a routine too, because I have to do my routine before I go to work in the morning, or this is going to be me in the morning. Well, sometimes it is me minus the curlers. If you can see me, my hair is too short for curlers. But, you know, you have to figure out what needs to be done before you go to work, because even though you're not leaving home, you kind of have to leave home to go into the office. So during work, you know, staying focused. One of the things that I have learned, because I've recently hired 7 staff who really didn't come with a lot of working at home experience, and they didn't come with Social Security experiences, which I needed them to have. And so, you know, I could train them on Social Security. I trained them before they went to the VCU, the Virginia Commonwealth University training for benefits planning. So they were ready for it. But what I couldn't prepare them for was being ready to work from home. And so I thought of these guys when I created this slide. One of the things that I noticed when I was pre-training them, we went to this church basement and I trained them for 3 days before they took off to go to the certification training, is I noticed a few of them had paper everywhere. So when we were talking about something, they couldn't find it because they had paper everywhere. And so I knew with them, I needed to help them keep their desk organized and simple. You know, my rule of thumb is what's on my desk is what I'm working on now, and everything else is out of sight. I don't have multiple things on my desk. I keep it simple. And I even learned this before a home office, but when I look at my to-do list, it can be a page long. Well, that's kind of intimidating. So what I do is I set small goals. Today by lunch, I'm going to get this done. Today by 5, I'm going to get this done. And I'm going to celebrate inside. I'm going to do my little happy dance that I got those done and off my plate. My favorite thing to do is to take my pen and erase it off my to-do list. I mean, it's just, there's something powerful about that. But don't set big goals. Don't say I'm going to open these 5 cases today, because maybe you don't get 5 answers on the phone, and then you have to figure out what else your goal is. Virtual calls, which is kind of funny since we're on virtual calls right now, or trainings, which is also funny because that's what we're doing. It's hard to stay focused. That's why I try to give you pictures, because I'm pretty boring. So what do you want to do? You want to take notes when you're on a call, when you're on a training, because you don't want to zone out because you don't have anybody to walk to the next office to figure out what you missed. So you need to take notes. And you need to be prepared to contribute ideas, ask questions, provide information. So when you're on those calls, stay focused. Be prepared for these calls. Don't just dial in last minute and let somebody talk in your ear while you're doing something else. Because what they're sharing with you in this new structure may be very important. So figure out how to stay focused. And again, reach out when that isolation hits. This last one is in bold because I'm guilty of it every day of my life. And I'm starting to notice that some of the folks on my team are becoming guilty of it too. We work really hard at Imagine, We work really smart at Imagine, but because we're home officed, sometimes we don't know when to stop. My husband will, if he was here, he'd be shouting hallelujah, amen, because I can come in this office at 4 o'clock in the morning and he'll come home at 6 o'clock at night from work and I'm still in the office. Or I can't sleep at night, so I'm in the office. You have to set boundaries. You need to get the work done, so work smart. Don't just work all the time because you can if you have that personality. Unfortunately, I have that personality. Now, if you have the personality who just doesn't want to work, well, come on, you need to come on to work. You can't just not do it. But I love this picture because to me, this guy is just in his zen while everything's coming at him. And that's how you have to be. My boss called me 20 minutes before I was supposed to get on the call with Heidi and Terry. And she said, do you have a minute? And I said, yes. And she goes, do you have 15 minutes? And I said, yes, but I don't have 16 minutes. And she's talking to me about 5 different things before I get on the call. And I literally pulled up this picture and I thought, listen to her, take notes, stay focused on the training you're about to do. So even though my boss knew I had this training, she had an emergency that she really needed my input on right before my call. Normally she would not do that because that's what a team does. We don't stress each other out. But sometimes life happens and you have to find your zen. So this is a picture I might be actually putting on my screensaver. Now, before the workday ends, and this is important because it'll help you when you come to work the next day, update your tracking system, update your to-do list, reorganize your desk, check your emails, celebrate your success, and I didn't miss it, I'm coming back to it. Secure PII, personally identifying information. Sorry, I put an acronym there. It's a habit of working with Social Security. We live in an acronym world. But you're going to have a lot of private information. Make sure you've got that way of securing it. But you don't want to just say, okay, it's 5 o'clock and leave your desk, because then you come back in the morning in an environment that's already distracting because it's your home. You come back to your desk and you don't even want to deal with it because it's just out of control. So clean up your desk, put out what you're going to do first thing in the morning, and put everything else in its spot and have your to-do list with your small goals. I'm telling you, it really saves the next morning when you are done and wrapping up for the night. I even take out my trash, because I throw so much stuff away during the day. I'm not a hoarder. If I can save it to a file, I'm not saving the hard copy. I know you guys at VR need to save the hard copy, so you don't have to send me that in a message. But just clean it up. Make it presentable so you want to come back in the morning. This I just found is cute. I'm sorry, it's just a little distraction. Although with homeschooling, I'm not sure my Sunday or my Saturday look that way anymore, because Saturday's usually homeschooling and Sunday's usually cleaning the house. But it's funny how when we get closer to the weekend, we just kind of get happier and happier. And that doesn't change when you work in your home office. So anyhow. So we're going to take a shift now. I'm used to asking questions throughout this, so this is kind of a little weird for me because I just keep talking. So we're going to talk a little bit now about remote job duties. And, you know, you're not working in a real office, and you have to kind of think differently about the tasks that you're doing. You know, again, do you have the tools? I'm going to always talk about, do you have that safe place? How do you plan, and how you plan and how you communicate all of these job duties are different, because again, you're not going to see this person. So you have to figure out how you're going to convey this and how you know that they're retaining it, that they're getting what you're explaining to them. So you want to identify some strategies. Here are 5 of them: the phone, the email, the fax, the postal service. some of the sites like Zoom or GoToMeeting like we're doing now. What we find at Imagine is that we commonly mostly use the phone. But you can't just rely on the phone because many of our folks that we work with have burner phones or they run out of minutes at the end of the month. So you have to kind of time when you call them, time when their meetings are, so that you can reach them, or you're not reaching them until they get their check again. We need to make sure that we're not sending out any emails that aren't encrypted that have any PII in it. So we have to make sure that we have that technology. I would say if I had to put a percentage to it, maybe 20 to 30% of our folks have access to a fax without having to pay for it. We really aren't a fan of having people fax us stuff that they have to pay for. Plus, I'm not sure well, maybe they're opening now, but I'm sure that they were closed and wouldn't have access to even going in there anyhow. The U.S. Postal Service is something else that we use a lot, and one of our secrets to getting things returned to us is we send them a self-addressed stamped envelope. We actually send them a bunch of them so that they can return stuff to us timely. We also use a lot of flags on pages where we need signatures or where we need them to return things. We also put on there a very simple note. I would say letter, but then you see big stuff, and we don't do big stuff. When we're sending them something that they need to sign and return, it really is on a large Post-it note where we kind of direct them what to do and why we need it and when we need it back by. And we find if we keep it simple, we get it back. We used to have these cover letters we sent with our stuff we needed back, and they were so overwhelmed by the cover letter, we never got our stuff back. So just as a hint, short, sweet, clear, concise works. Now, I have been asked if we use Zoom or GoToMeeting. We have never used it in our 25 years of service with beneficiaries because most of them either don't have the internet access, the technology, or the understanding. But we do not rule it out. It's not forbidden for us to use. So if you guys have that social tool that you guys can use with them, great, because I think, especially on new cases that are coming your way, you're not meeting them. If they can see your face, all the better. But these are kind of the tools we have. Again, the most we use are phone and the Postal Service. And we have a separate site. I think there were a few of you on this call from Texas, so you might work with Celeste, Stacy, or Kelly. We have a fee for service with our state VR. And so we've created a website where they can send their encrypted emails that only the 4 of us can get on. And so it's even extra secure. It's just us who can get it. They send it encrypted. We send them an encrypted response, and we provide them services. So that's been very successful. Again, fax and like the Zoom, GoToMeeting, things we're doing now, we don't use, but they are certainly an option. We have worked with some people who do have that technology, but again, they just don't choose to use it. So it is their choice. So current caseloads. You want to review your current caseloads as soon as you kind of move out of your office to figure out where you're at with them. You know, what are they currently receiving? What's still out there pending, maybe with a vendor, maybe there's an assessment out there, you know, when's it due? You know, kind of, there's more of an urgency to kind of update that to-do list, that calendar, that tracking. When are things due? So you want to take a good look at your current caseload and just say, where are we at? Where are we at? Because now you're not meeting with them anymore face to face. And then I'm assuming, because we're still getting referrals from our state VR, that you guys are still getting new referrals. So what's your virtual plan for them? Okay, how are you going to get that referral? How are you going to complete that assessment? Gather the demographics, you know, all of this list, referrals, consents, service authorizations, invoices. How are you going to do all of that over the phone and understand that they're following what you're asking. The hardest part of being on the phone with somebody is figuring out what their retention of what we're talking about is. How much information is too much? How far do I get to go on this call with this person before everything I've said to them is lost because I've provided them too much information? So you need to think through your delivery of your new referrals and what you need and what's your plan to do it virtually. And on a lot of my slides, you'll see that last bullet, what else did I miss? Because I'm not a VR counselor. I do not work for VR. I have never worked for VR. I have worked with VR for about 35 years, but I've never been a VR employee. So activating the new referrals too. What do you need to gather? How do you need to track it? How do you know it's coming back to you? Because oftentimes we get into a pattern when we're used to an office that we sit down with people, we show them the paper, we explain it to them, and then we have them sign. Do you see how many steps that are that happen when we're with them face to face? Those steps don't happen when we're virtual. We have to make sure we have a plan. We have to make sure this is almost a checklist of what I have to know. And then you see on there, answer questions. Well, I can just answer the questions on the phone. Well, did they understand the answer? Do you maybe need to resend that answer in a note because it was very important to remind them? And then making sure they have a follow-up. You know, when are they supposed to call you again? Or when are you going to call them again? And will they answer the phone? And what do you need to do to remind them of that? I mean, there's a lot of steps when you're not actually meeting with people. And identifying needs is tricky. Because some people can walk in your office and you can maybe in your mind, by watching them or listening to them or their mannerisms, come up with some possible need areas. Well, you don't have that advantage when you're on the phone. So you have to figure out ways of making sure you're giving the best well-rounded services that you can. So issues with communication. When you get a new referral, and I'm begging you on this one, okay? When you get a new referral, don't cold call them. They probably are not going to answer the phone because they don't know your number. They're probably not going to answer the phone because they don't know your number. And how do I know this? As I said, we have a fee for service with the state of Texas, VR, and they send us referrals to do benefits planning on folks around Texas. And when we first started, I don't know, 8 years ago, we would cold call them and nobody would pick up the phone. And we would just be so frustrated. Well, they don't know our phone number. They don't know maybe who we are even. They don't know that maybe the counselor referred to us or forgot that the counselor referred to us. So one of the things that we do is we send a very short, clear, and I put letter here, I probably should have put note, in advance. We get the referral. We send them a note saying, hey, I got your referral for this service. I would like to set up a time to talk to you to start your intake. And here's my phone number, by the way, if you see it come across your phone. Then they'll answer the phone. We've had much more success since we started sending out notes. Cold calls rarely work. I cannot stress that enough. The other thing you need to think about are language barriers. Do you need an interpreter? Is there a family or friend who can speak for them? Do you need to use the language line? Do you need to use the relay? So addressing, hopefully on the referral, there will be something that will identify if there's any language barriers. And then again, the retention. You can't see their face. You don't know when you've lost them. Not everybody can take in the same amount and quality and quantity of information that we must share with them to get our jobs done. So you want to just keep it simple, do some reflectiveness. Now what do you need to do, Sandy? Okay, so when you get that document, what do you need to do? Make sure that they're repeating back to you so that you can kind of get a level of their understanding. And when you're asking them to return something, again, the self-addressed stamped envelope on pencil, we will write on the envelope, put in the mail by the state. And they tend to do that once you've developed that trust. Remember, because they haven't maybe met you yet, they don't trust you because they don't know you. So the next few slides are going to be about building that trust. Your communication skill is a little bit different on the phone than it is when you're sitting with somebody. You want to make sure before you call somebody, you've got this quiet, calming background. You want to make sure you call them when you said you were going to call them. If they still don't answer the phone, leave a warm and welcoming email. Let them know when you're going to call them again. Be careful not to leave any personal identifying information. We don't know who might listen to their message, but you certainly can make it warm and inviting so they want to call you back. I always say go fishing with them. Give them a hook. Give them some reason to call you back. I have some information that we talked about that I'd like to share with you that I think could help you. Now, if they do answer the phone and you don't get their voice message, I always say we have to develop a relationship before you're going to get trust. So ask them how they're doing. Ask them how they're doing with the COVID. Ask them how their family's doing. Show them that you care. Explain to them that even you are working from home now. That this is impacting you too. Kind of relating to each other. That starts developing trust. Start the intake, but don't make it feel like it's a checklist that you're going down. What's your name? What's your address? Do you take medicine? What benefits do you receive? Have it figure out how to do a conversational interview to get the information you need without it being a checklist. Because when I'm sitting with you at a table, they can see it's a checklist, and so their mind is mentally prepared for it. But most people, when they're on the phone talking to you, they want to talk to you. It's not a checklist kind of conversation. So if they don't have time to complete the intake now, or you're not getting through it to a degree that you like, make sure you ask those pressing questions that can't wait. So you want to get those out first, because you don't know how long this person's going to hold up, how much they're going to understand. So get the big information first in a conversational way. I hope that makes sense, because that is like super duper important. So I saw this chart on here and it just makes sense to me. So our presence, we want to elicit trust. We want them to trust us. So we have to have pauses. We have to show that we're listening to them, and we need to know that they're hearing us. And we do that by clarifying, and it just stays a circle. And the more we stay in this circle, the tighter your relationship is, and I promise you, the more responsive that they will be to getting what you need done. So gathering, building trust, walk your talk. We say that all the time at Imagine. Are you walking your talk? Because this is where it's going to be the most frustrating, right here, gathering. It'll be the most frustrating because things really slow down here. Documents aren't returned timely, or documents aren't even returned. You have to be super duper clear about what you need from them and why, and when you need it by. Sometimes you have to help them locate where to go get the information. Say you need something from housing, or you need something from SNAP. And again, make sure they recap. Some of this stuff I know I'm repeating, so don't ding me for it, but it's that important. When you're gathering stuff, they need to know what they're getting, so they have to be able to recap it to you. And then create a system. I've promoted the little short note, the postcard, but we have, with our WIPA, and we're also doing a demonstration for the federal government called POD, we've created different levels of contact with our folks. Now, we have more time than you guys probably do to get things done, but first we might do a call to remind them. Then we might send a postcard to remind them. And then, we just keep reaching different levels. I should have written out exactly what it is. But you want to create a system for you so that you're getting what you need. Again, the first meeting before you call them after you get a referral, they should have a postcard before so they know that you're calling and here's the number you're calling from. But when things go to them that they need returned, you have to figure out ways of sending it to them, and then what reminders and when are you going to send them out. Usually we send out our first reminder about 7 days after we send it out before they have time to lose it, sometimes 3 or 4 if they're local. But you want to stay on top of it because getting that information is going to be the slowest, hardest part of your job. So tracking and gathering. Once you complete your intake and you have all your assessments and you've got all the stuff that you need to look at your case, you need to figure out how you're going to track and secure that in your home. It's not a lot different than what you do in your office, okay? You just want to make sure that everything is in that you need. And analyzing too, it's just like in your office. You're putting the pieces together, you're clarifying what's missing and how to get it. You're looking at the goal and you're kind of coming up with some different options that this person might want to consider. And then you're preparing how to explain it all. Because again, they're not coming to the office. So make sure that you look at these steps so that you're able to, once you have all the information and we're ready to start soliciting some services, that we're all on the same page. Create that service plan. This one just makes sense to me. Where does what go? I have all the information I need. Where does what go? Now, documentation. You're going to get this from your boss, because this is kind of important. Is documentation the exact same way it was when you were in the office? I think you need to write very thorough case notes. And if you look at the third bullet, it's kind of where I want to really focus as far as this slide. When you're working with people that you've never met, you may want to write in your case notes little nuances about them that you noticed, so that should they call you, you can maybe recognize their voice or their name. Or, when you start personalizing things to people, it really is helpful in developing that relationship. So just little teasers that help you kind of remember who's who. On our teams, our pod team, our national demonstration, each person has 280 people. So that was quite a challenge for them to figure out when somebody calls, how long it would take them to recognize their voice, recognize their situation. And that's because we start each phone call with them by asking about how they're doing, developing that relationship. Make sure everything you're sending to them is clear. Use your peer or a supervisor review and gain their guidance so that in this new environment of home office that your documentation is meeting the needs of the state that you live in, but it's also meeting the needs of the beneficiary, most important, that you're trying to provide services to. So put on your thinking caps, make that light bulb go to 100 watts. You can do this. I have full confidence. And then ongoing support. Now, before you tell me, I know you have to close them out at a certain time, so I don't mean that you're going to have them for the next 60 years, but you will provide them ongoing support as they're going through the process. So make sure, because again, maybe they met you once or twice, but now you're remote. Maybe they've worked with you for a while and they know you, or maybe they're brand new to you. But because nobody can get to each other, make sure you're responsive. Maybe stay in touch with them more than you normally would have. Stay friendly even when it gets frustrating, because we know it can get frustrating. Be thorough, but remember you might have to give them bite-sized pieces. Stay current on their personal status. Like I said, talk to them, get to know them. How are things going? and just be available to them with their ongoing support, because support is everything. You know, we're lifting them up. Sometimes we're their only person that they have, and our job is just really important. So tracking, again, I'm not going to spend much time here. I already have. I don't know if you use Post-it notes. I have stopped using a calendar. I have a little Google calendar that I use, but I just keep written down on a piece of paper what I have that day. And then I just kind of look in my drawer for projecting out, because sometimes a calendar can be a little bit overwhelming to me, but I use a calendar, but I don't use a calendar. I like my written to-do lists. So what's next? You know, we have to wrap up with reporting and quality assurance. So let's just jump into reporting. Now, this is where I don't know what you guys report. So I just kind of went by what we do. You know, we've got monthly reports, quarterly reports, annual reports. We've got caseload documentation, and we have correspondence. One of the things that we have shifted is about making sure that we are more than numbers. And if we have to be numbers, that we still tell a story through those numbers. So what do I mean? When we report out to Social Security or to whoever our funder is, and they want numbers, I may include another category. Like this month, I included how many people lost their job. How many people still couldn't get through to unemployment? How many people got on unemployment? You know, I used my numbers to tell a story. I also would highly suggest this, especially with your supervisor and your peers, to really share your remote strategies, because everybody is learning this as they go. Share your success stories. Be they, I don't know, you learned that if you did X, Y, and Z happened automatically. But share what's successful, even in your little goals. You know, you have to celebrate because you're not together. And also, and I put this in bold, but show your supervisor that you've got this. That, yeah, life is really different now. Yeah, you've been thrown in the deep end into an environment without much support, but you know, you're doing okay. You got this. And you may feel like this, but you know, you've got this. You can do this. Nothing's hard. So, well, some things are hard, but you guys got this. So quality service, develop that trust, because I'm here to tell you, when you provide a remote service, if that person on the other end that you're providing a service to doesn't trust you, there is nothing going to happen for you. There's nothing going to happen. So stay in touch. Know that your cases will go slower. Make sure you're still referring to vendors. I know because we're doing some pre-ETS here that we have had to shift from going into the classrooms to doing virtual. So I know that you guys are making those exceptions. So please make sure you're using your vendors through those exceptions. Keep your documentation, reach out more. But mostly when it comes to quality service, I say this to all my staff, they probably have it written on their forehead. You may be the only support that this participant has. And this is a scary time. So especially now, we have to make sure that everything we provide to that beneficiary is quality, because it's just scary. So here's just something else for me to share with you. I can't end without talking about security. It's been drilled into my brain because we work with people and have all of their private information. I know you guys have to have paper case files, so make sure that they're locked up in a double case. Make sure that your home office has the ability to have that double lock. Make sure that you have the encryption capability for all your emails and your online files, and that you're not sharing, but that's just a standard rule. I put it in there without even thinking, or else 2020 or the FBI might be knocking on your door. So we certainly do not want that to happen. So, whew, you guys have a lot of responsibilities, and I went over the responsibilities. I know, I'm sure I missed a ton, but be kind to yourself. Think through the process. If you figure out steps that no one else has figured out, share them. And it's okay if you have a bad day, just don't stay there. And remember, you have a critical and important role that really impacts a person's life. These aren't numbers. So how can I help you while you're juggling a million things? And having worked with VR for a long period of time, you guys have always been my superheroes for a very long time. I've always enjoyed working with you guys and have a lot of respect for what you do. In closing, embrace this adventure. Ask for additional training, tools, and guidance. Be present and patient. Set your daily goals. Stay focused and organized. Be kind to yourself and others. And you've got this, because I think you're pretty invincible. And even though you're alone, it's still a we thing. So let's keep it a we thing. Let's stay a team. Let's stay communicating. And it's been an honor. And I hope my time is good, Terry, or else you can yell at me now. So thank you so much. Or Heidi. Hello, Heidi.
Hi, Sandy. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. That was excellent, even for me. I love some of those ideas. Working from home has been pretty interesting. I've had to build very comfortable baskets that I call cat traps so that the cats don't wander in and out of frame when I'm doing a webinar. But thanks for the other tips. They were great. Terry, I'm going to turn it over to you to do Q&A with Sandy, and then if I believe you're going to wrap it up at the end. So I'll let you two go.
Great, thanks. Once again, thank you. And questions are coming in. First question from Crystal, and it's actually for attendees as well as for Sandy. Crystal's interested. She has, in her agency, they're required to have a face-to-face. So for Sandy, suggestions about face-to-face, but Crystal is also interested to hear from attendees, and you could put this in the chat box, what people use for face-to-face virtual communications. As I was watching chat, some folks use Teams, but Crystal would be interested in sort of getting the range of options that others use for face-to-face. But Sandy, any suggestions around face-to-face or the ones you found particularly helpful?
Yeah, the only face-to-face that I could see being successful, given what we know at Imagine, is if they have a cell phone and you can do a face-to-face that way. Most people know how to do those kind of FaceTimes. It doesn't cost any more, probably, unless they are paying for minutes. You have to be aware of that. If they're paying for minutes and you have a 20-minute call, they may not want to do that. So, and so it's still a requirement, huh? That's kind of interesting, because I would think that would be one of the first exceptions that they would make, but what do I know? So that's my wisdom.
As you know, everybody's different.
Yeah.
So a question from George. How do you maintain confidentiality when delivering either VR services or counselor supervision when working from home? And then he also had a second part to that. Do you think this content can be used for providing tele-mental health services? And might be just your opinion, or on the second part, but again, confidentiality while you're doing this, and your thoughts on tele-mental health service delivery.
Yeah, one of the things that we have, George, especially with our pod program, we had it with WIPA for a while, but we have, we use AWS, I can't remember, Amazon Workspace. We use Amazon Workspace, and we have our own database in there, and we have our own encrypted email in there. And so we tend to use that a lot for sharing. And during team calls, we only use case numbers, but mostly when we're sharing, we talk about a case, but we don't talk about names, because it's not important for me to know a name to help you problem solve a situation. So we don't share names over any team meetings or anything. So as far as mental health, that's not my area of expertise. Maybe somebody else on the call could have some information on that.
What we could do for that, for George, is we can internally, that could be a carryover question, and we could do some
Sure.
checking and
Yeah.
add that back in when we post all the questions and
That's a
answers
good
on the
idea.
webpage after this. Related to that, Anita had a question, ideas on being able to use a printer from home that would be secure to not compromise confidentiality. I guess it's sort of, at work, there's some pieces, I don't know, thoughts on printing confidential documents at home to not compromise the confidentiality.
Yeah, no. What we do, because okay, first of all, there's no easy fix for this. But what we do is when we use a regular printer. So let me just preface that at first, okay? But our printer doesn't leave our office, which is locked. When our printer breaks down, we take out the hard drive or whatever it's called, and we destroy it ourselves.
Okay.
But as far as just printing, I don't know of any secure printing. I know some printers where you use like fax machines and stuff that are more secure than others. But as far as basic printing, we print and then we destroy the printer when it's broke. We don't just like recycle it or throw it away. We take the guts out and destroy it, and then we recycle the rest.
Okay, good. Well, thanks. And perhaps if that's an issue, check with the vendor, the manufacturer of your printer might be an option as well. In this day and age, they might be doing some updates. Just a thought. Leslie had a question about the peer support meetings. Mm-hmm. Are they for the whole team? And then she had a follow-up, or are you saying that you are pairing people up for these pair buddy meetings? Could maybe say a little bit more specifics about the peer support, peer buddy?
Yeah, and I'm super happy that you asked that because that is so critical. So there's it's a two-faceted thing. I, being their supervisor, have a call with everybody every week. And during that time, we talk business. We talk outcomes. We talk scope of work. But if you remember, I said I had broken them into groups of 2 to do BS&A reviews, to look at documentation reviews, to help each other. And when COVID hit, we weren't writing BS&As because people were going to work, because people were losing their jobs and they needed a whole different level of service from us. And I was worried about my staff. So what we did is we stopped calling them peer reviews and we called them peer supports. And I'm not on those calls. They can certainly share anything that they want with each other. I do ask them a series of questions to work through on the call. The call can last 5 minutes or the call can last an hour. I don't really care. But the first thing that they do is they check in on how they're doing. And we do it on Zoom because they have to be on camera so that we can see them too, so we know they're doing well. But peer supports has been highly successful on helping people who maybe don't understand. Okay, I'm going to talk from a Social Security world. Maybe they don't understand how the extended period of eligibility works, but their peer does. So they're learning it without, me having to retrain them. And so it really has been successful. It's highly popular. They look forward to the calls. And sometimes they will debrief with me on our Thursday call. They'll say, yeah, during our team support call, this happened. Not because they have to, but because they're excited. It's kind of giving them a platform to talk and to not always have it be business, because this is a scary time.
Okay, thanks. Question from Kathy. Could you do a quick verbal checklist on the PII info? Or, would you guys, Imagine considers PII?
Sure, yeah. Name, address, social security number, date of birth. I wish I would have known. Yeah, it is a trick question because there's more. When I said we use their case numbers, we usually use the last 4 of their case numbers. We don't give the full case number out. So anything that could identify them. So, and I could come up with a better checklist because I have one, but nobody's asked me that for a very long time.
We can, as we noted in the event, we don't, either way, we will get that checklist from Sandy. And when we post the recording and all the information online, we'll include Sandy's checklist for PII information.
Yeah, and let me tell you, just not to take up too much time on this, but it's so important. I have worked from home, like I said, for 21 years, and I've had the kids that I'm raising right now are 10 and 12. They know when I'm not in the office not to come in. They know that this office is locked. You know, they don't play on my computer. They don't come to my desk, and they're 10 and 12. Because I don't want 2020 or the FBI knocking on my door. You know, my husband doesn't come in here. I have a lady who comes and cleans every 2 weeks. She does not clean this office. And stuff is already locked up. But I am very cognizant that these are people's identification, and identity theft is so prevalent right now. I mean, if we have folks in California, I used to work with California, and their identity theft was out of the roof with Social Security. So yeah, anything that you think could lead back to them, don't. Make sure it's secure.
Great, thanks. Maybe following up on that piece about security, a couple of related questions we'll take. Jacqueline had a piece. We have encryption for emails, but people can't figure out how to open it. So then we can't even communicate with them via internet. Has that been an issue you've encountered, and suggestions for Jacqueline or others?
Yeah, you notice I did laugh. Because yes, that is a problem. The best thing that you can do, and I'm assuming that you're talking about working with the participants, but I mean, it could even be a vendor. What you have to do is figure out the easiest way, even if it's screenshots, to come up with a sheet of paper or some type of instruction where they can see the step-by-step on how to unencrypt a document. And the reason I laugh is because when we first started with doing fee-for-service with State VR, we were just getting everything encrypted now because, anyhow, we were getting everything encrypted, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me how to open that first email. I had to call her. So it's not just the beneficiaries. So it's us too.
So related to that, I think, from my standpoint, from another individual, what do you do when the letter in the note doesn't work? They tend to be working in a very urban, low socioeconomic area, so there are probably a number of barriers. Many individuals don't have an email, so it seems like cold calls are the only way to reach, but they don't work either. Your advice on that kind of situation, on trying to reach people when the notes aren't working and they don't have email?
So I guess when you say notes aren't working, I'm assuming that doesn't include the U.S. Postal Service, because pretty much everybody would get an email or a letter.
They don't say, but I would, my assumption might be that they are sending them a letter. They just aren't responding to the letter.
So they're just not responding to the letter.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I know you guys can't do this, but our secret is we created tchotchkes with Imagine's logo on it, like pens and other things, so we kind of send that to them. I don't know, because if I'm totally honest, we still have people who don't send us back, even with all of our creativeness. But you have to, that's when I talked about, you have to have a level. This is what you send them, with your note, with your flags, with the return envelope, asking them to send it back. And then your next note to them or phone call to them is kind of talking about why this is urgent, why this is urgent. But I can't make them return it back. If I had my counselors on the call right now, they would be laughing, because it's our number one problem that we have. And we have people who are going to work on Social Security, and they want to know what happens to their Social Security. Yet when we give them the paperwork to return so we can find out and they don't return it, yeah, I mean, I feel your pain. There is no secret bullet. There is no prize. You just have to do your best. You have to just make it feel important and that you're just thankful. I mean, sometimes you just, yeah. I wouldn't say beg, but maybe next door.
All right. Question from Bonnie. When you are working with individuals who are blind or have visual impairments, do you provide materials in alternative formats? And I think through all this, but anyway.
Yeah, no, the first thing we do when we get the referral is we figure out what accommodations they use, and then we do that. Now, brailing is harder for us right now because no one's working in the office because we were able to use our local resources who have braillers, and they will braille it for us for an in-kind amount because we've worked with them for so long. But no, we try to reach whatever there is, and if we're unable to, like right now we can't braille, and the counselors haven't told me about any brailing at this point, but if I were to get that phone call or request for brailled information and I don't have access because of COVID, what I would do is contact that person to say, is there someone that could read this letter to you if I just sent you a letter for now until we can get it brailled? Is there a safe person that you would be willing to let read this?
Okay, good. Follow up on our earlier question around sort of security and encryption. Viviana had a question. When you need the client to send you a signed document, including some personal information or including personal information, but the client has difficulties understanding how to secure the document, how do you manage that?
Okay, so Terry, tell me again. So they have a signed document. They have a document that you need them to sign and return, correct? They're not securing a different document.
I don't believe so. I believe they have sent perhaps a plan or something along those lines, have asked them to sign it, and they're asking the client to send it back, but they would like the client to secure the document. And they may have given them instructions about how to secure the document, but are having, the client is having difficulty understanding perhaps the instructions. How would you manage that?
Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by secure the document. I guess
probably encrypt. I would assume encrypt the document.
Okay, most of the time when we send them a document, we're sending it through the U.S. Postal Service. Okay. We don't rarely send a beneficiary a document over technology for the very reason that you're coming across they don't understand how to use it. If something like, let's say it's an intake or a demo, some kind of form where all their information is on there, we will put it as they have to sign for it. That signature is required. The postman's not just going to leave it in the mailbox.
Maybe a follow-up to that, Sandy, is the addressed envelope regular first-class mail, or do you do return receipt or registered, something like that?
No, we just do register. We don't need returned receipt unless, I guess we maybe have used it on occasion, but no, we just want to make sure that it is not being left just in a box.
Okay. So if I understood you, you are using registered, or are you just using first class?
We always use first class, and we use registered when there's significant amount of PII in there.
Oh, okay, good, thank you. Let's see. From Lisa, what have you found to be the most beneficial tracking system? Or how have you,
okay.
What have you come to?
Woof, tracking systems. Okay, so that's kind of a loaded question. And let me just kind of foreshadow what I'm going to be telling the supervisors next week. What I'm going to say is figure out what you need from your counselors and create one form. Because when you get it back, if you get 18 different tracking systems that the information is all in different places, you're going to lose your mind. So that's what I'm going to say to the supervisor. So I laugh because your supervisor should give you what she needs from you in a tracking system format. And I plan to suggest some tracking systems to your supervisor. But if you look at my PowerPoints, you can almost see the tracking system in there. Have you received the referral? Has initial contact been made? When was it made? How many days? What's the response? Where are we at in the process? It's kind of tracking through. Now some, because remember, I have not worked for VR, some might just want numbers. So I don't know, then you have your columns with your numbers or your slashes, whatever you use. But we talked yesterday, Heidi and Terry and I talked yesterday about creating a tracking sheet, and I'm happy to look at one. I would just ask that if you're interested in me developing a tracking system, are you wanting me a tracking system based on global job duties or completing a case? Because those are two different tracking sheets. So with clarification, I think I could narrow it down, but to just ask me about tracking sheets, I think each counselor probably has 3 tracking sheets under their belt. One for reports, one for their daily work, and one for each case that they're doing. So.
Okay, for those of you that might have an interest in Sandy putting together a sample tracking sheet based on her experience, and do you want global, what I think, Sandy, what would be the 2 categories? And it could be both as well, global and I think maybe specific client. Put a note in the chat for us and we'll pick that up after we're done.
I mean, I'm happy to do a tracking sheet because I think tracking sheets are good. It's just that when you, the global term tracking sheet kind of scares me because I want to know what you need to nail down.
Okay. Maybe some more specifics about what you'd like. Those of you that are attending and would be interested, what would you like specifically, or what do you think would be beneficial from your standpoint? A couple of questions actually goes to the theme of our session today. One from Brittany. What would be your suggestions for individuals who don't have a true office and they're working from a kitchen table? And then the second piece, do you believe that you are just as productive as if you worked in an office, or more or less? And then wondering, are there any case studies about the productivity of working from home versus working from the office?
Oh, geez, I'm sure there's case studies, but I'm too busy to read them. I'm surviving the day. Yeah, okay, so you guys have been thrown into this because one of the things that I ask when I'm interviewing for positions is, would you have a designated space for a home office? I mean, it could just be a fourth of a bedroom. You can keep your bedroom, but can you put an office in there? Because one of the things when it comes to PII is it's supposed to be double locked. And double locked to me means my file cabinet locks and my office door locks. That's a double lock. So I'm mostly concerned about you for the PII. Make sure you have a crisscross shredder. So crisscross shredders cannot be pieced back together should somebody get into your shredding. So, but I've had a lady who worked from a bar, not a bar. She had a bar in her kitchen. And so she worked from her bar until we got her settled. I had somebody who worked off of a card table. It's an awful situation. So, I mean, it's doable, but you have to be super organized. You have to be super neat. If there's any way to move a couch or a chair and just to put some type of desk there, even if it's a card table, bless your heart. Yeah. I couldn't do it. I've got too much stuff. So, but you can do it. You can do it. And then when you talked about time, I'm going to be really honest with you. One of the things that I loved when I started home officing is I didn't get pulled into all these meetings. So I was far more productive. I could do 3 days worth of work in an 8-hour day because nobody was bothering me. So in that sense, it's great. But the isolation and the desire to go do your laundry or fix dinner or something, pulls you, and you don't have anybody around to motivate you. So I think it equals out that I end up doing the same, but don't be like me and be in your office 18 hours a day either, or your bar stool or whatever you said. So yeah. And I hope, hopefully your boss is helping you figure out how to make that a better situation for you. So.
Thanks. I think we have run out of time for all the questions. I will let everybody know who is still with us that we will be asking Sandy, and she has agreed to answer all the questions we weren't able to get to this afternoon. Thanks very much for some great questions. What I want to do before we wrap up here in the last couple of minutes, for those of you that are interested in CRC credit, for all of you that attended the session today, you will get an email tomorrow that requests you to complete an evaluation form on this particular webinar. And at the end of that evaluation, there's a question asking, would you like CRC credit? And in that, you'll check that box as a yes, and then you'll need to give us your email address so we know where to send the CRC credit. So that's how that will happen. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Great session, great turnout. We have, again, every Thursday at this time, we have an E3 webinar between now and at least mid-June. So please join us for those. Again, all of our sessions are available for CRC credit. This session as well has been recorded and will get posted to the Project E3 website. It takes a couple of weeks. We like to match up, double check that the captioning matches up to the oral presentation and some other pieces we want to confirm. So anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, you can find this on our projecte3.com site. And again, for others that may need, they're both interested in this topic and or need CRC credit, all of the archive webcasts are available to watch and can be available for CRC credit after you answer the evaluation of that. So again, we have a large number of already archived webcasts on a number of topics that could be of interest to individuals in the VR field. So with that, I would like to thank everybody for joining us today, and we'll leave the chat box up for a bit, a couple minutes in case there's some pieces in there that people would like to scroll through and find some of the answers on your face-to-face software and other pieces. But with that, we are done. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy.
You're welcome.